some years ago, and I was leaving Cabuna after 10 or 12 years, a lady said to me, "Father, we'll miss you." And I said, "Thank you, and I'll miss you." And she said, "No, you won't. That's missionary life. You move on to the next thing." This is Mission Alive. I'm Roger from MSC Mission Office. And it was true. I moved on to another job, and I did many things. And in many ways, I did miss those people, but in many ways I didn't. Because that is part of missionary life. Yesterday in the readings, after Jesus had been around some villages and preaching, teaching, curing, driving out demons, he went up into the hills to pray by himself, which was part of his way of working, part of his life, and it has to be also part of the life of mission, of missionaries, that we spend time in prayer close to God. And when his disciples came and came to find him, he said, "We will go somewhere else because I have other places to go. I have to go and preach in other villages. For that's why I am here. That is what is my mission." So they went somewhere else. And that's typical often of the life of a missionary, and it has been. And many missionaries, some of whom I've mentioned in some stories, have moved on to other things. They've moved on because they're called to other works. They've moved on because of sickness and ill health or old age, and many have died. And of course, over a period of time, many people have died. I remember years ago going to Yule Island, where the Papuan mission began. And there's a cemetery there with many missionaries buried there. And as I went around, I noted the ages of the missionaries. And it was notable that they were either young or old. I think when they came and they suffered from malaria and other sicknesses of the tropics, they either survived that and lived for a long time, or they died young. But in any case, they moved on. And so that is part of the story of the mission, that there's always other works, there's other things to move on to. For myself, most of my life I've spent in about 10-year periods. By the end of about 10 years, time to move on. There was something else calling. And some of the missionaries, they could have died. They could have been killed, but they survived. Bishop Alan de Bomenu, famous story of him, a confrontation with a chief in the mountains, and the chief wanted to kill him. Bit of a long story there, maybe for another time. But the chief changed his mind. Bishop Alan de Bomenu was friendly to him, and he survived and became a friend of that chief, and that opened up a whole new area of mission. And some missionaries have died. Some have died at sea. Some were killed in the mountains. In the highlands, there was an SVD brother who was shot in the chest 8 times with arrows, simply because he was an outsider, a European. Because of something the government had done, or a patrol officer had done, or some incident elsewhere, he was walking through that area and he was shot. He was killed. In other places and other areas, missionaries died of shipwreck. Some were killed by the native peoples. There may have been cases where they were killed and eaten, they were cannibalized. Such is the life of missionary work. To go into areas in those days that were new, it was part of the colonial world, there was a lot of danger. But we move on, and that is part of the gospel, part of the message. We preach the gospel and we move on. Paul is a great example of that. He was constantly moving on from one place to another, such as mission. The mission is alive, whether we stay in one place forever and do mission work, or whether we move on. Thank you for being part of the mission with us.